Mr. Atoye, you know, supporters of the president would say that, in a contrarian view, that if you look back in history, you know, the title of the documentary, I think, was something like Behind the Iron and Steel or something like that. When you look back in history, that even as a military ruler, he was one of the few military rulers who didn't assassinate political opponents or those who were coming for his office, but rather opted to put them in jail. They would say that even if you look at today, Nigerians are saying, look, you know, these corrupt officials from past administrations, put them in jail, put them in jail. Meanwhile, nobody's going to jail. They're just recovering assets. Do you think that in some ways the president's been misrepresented, as his supporters would allege, that he's actually somebody who has a moral code that wouldn't allow him to be the kind of vindictive, hard person that we've seen other leaders be? What are your thoughts on that?
First, the whole and the entire anti-corruption crusade has become more or less like a ruse, a kind of an arrangement where some people are taking advantage of the country using the EFCC. There is a cartel, a kind of a cartel now that is running the EFCC. And over time, Nigerians will see through this. They just continue to take advantage of us as a nation, and you know, some of these things are out in public. But however, let me say this, that Mr. President has always always run away from responsibility. Even as a military head of state that you talked about, he was not part of the coup. He himself said it. Some people did this coup and they called him as a senior military officer to come and, you know, head that particular government. And the same thing, he always shy away from taking this responsibility. It's not as if I'm here to cast aspersion on him. He's a fine gentleman. The only thing we are expecting from him as our president is the fact that we want to see good governance, we want to see action, because he should be the most prepared person contesting the election 4 times. But we're not seeing that in terms of hitting the ground running. When he came on board, wasted over 6 months before he was able to constitute his cabinet, thereby allowing Nigeria to drift into recession, because you see the issue of economics and governance are very, very something that are very, very of utmost importance in terms of time factor. People are now reasoning in minutes, in seconds. We don't have that luxury of time to be doing administration in weeks, in days, and even in months. We don't have that luxury of time considering what's going on globally. So basically, the anti-corruption crusade of this administration that they so much bandied around has been more or less a kind of I don't want to call it as hogwash, but I want to say that they've not really done enough in terms of fighting corruption. They've not introduced any new things in terms of maybe technology on how to track funds or how to do due diligence in terms of managing the anti-corruption process. There are a lot of recent, we have not been seeing money being discovered in bizarre locations, and Nigerians are worrying, what happened to the ones you discovered? And you see, when you are fighting you are doing anti-corruption crusade, and you are less transparent, and you are doing it in an opaque manner, that's its old gamut. Everything entirely also is more or less will be couched in also corruption.
Mr. Atoye, I want to ask you a point-blank question. Has this administration, in the area of anti-corruption, has this administration achieved more or less than previous administrations since the inception of the Fourth Republic in 1999? Yeah,
I think they've achieved less, because let me tell you, the facts speak for themselves. One thing they have always been running away from is they will always criticize statistics. Before they came on board, the previous index released by international agencies, they always issued statements rubbishing all these statistics, all these facts. But now they got a good one based on ease of doing business, and they are running over the places and celebrating it. That's statistics also from probably a foreign body, telling them that they've done better in terms of ease of doing business. So you cannot choose, for Nigerians, you cannot reprobate and approbate. If you want to abide by foreign statistics, statistics by internationally recognized bodies, reputable agencies, then you also have to abide by it in a sector of the nation. And talking about corruption, what is Transparency International talking about this administration? And when you compare the figures, you know that they've not done better by previous administration. There is no remarkable improvement.
Mr. Atoye, if you look at the facts and figures as you mentioned, because it's an area I like to dwell in, when you talk about asset recovery, right now you're looking at 3 or 4 times in just a span of about 2 years as what has happened over the last 16 years. That's a fact. That's not an opinion.
That's not a fact. That's not a fact.
That's a fact, sir. You can dispute it, but it's a fact. If you talk about the money and the assets that have accrued over time. So I really want to ask you, based on your assessment of all the sectors of the administration, because there's no doubt there are shortcomings and there are successes, like every government has shortcomings and successes. Would you say, if you look at the political landscape and you say President Buhari is just not getting the job done, who is it that you look at in the political environment that potentially come in and do a better job, regardless of party?
No. You see, before I even go into the party or individuals they're talking about, you see, it's not as if they've not done some remarkable things in terms of fighting security, even within the anti-corruption crusade, limitedly. But because they're always the one that doesn't know how to sustain their own goodwill, they are always the ones also trying to do things that usually counter whatever they are doing. For instance, when you are prosecuting people and there is a case of corruption against people in your own cabinet, and you are foot dragging, and you are not you are not using that same measure. And in Nigeria and the African tradition, we always say charity begins at home. Nigerians want to see the reason why Nigerians bought into the anti-corruption crusade when former President Obasanjo started it was that the first people who were victims of that anti-corruption were members and were his friends. So this is the place to start from.
Mr. Atoye, this is where we're going to have to end this very interesting conversation. I want to thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
So standing with us has been a pro-democracy activist and public affairs analyst, Aiyedare Atoye. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to take it to Lagos.